What we want to look at is the way in which a distortion has crept into the maps of the world. Distortion in position of longitude. This was probably somewhat of a natural consequence of having the British Crown where it is and was. The Greenwich site, however, is not the original. A little place 1 degree over, 1 full degree over from where the Greenwich is what you need to know. There is a place, it goes right through the center of it, called Nettle Bed. Now, it originally is with that name in Greek. And that is the basis for the mystery that surrounds why, when nettles are over a great number of places, it in particular was called Nettle Bed. As I said, the name was originally in Greek. Now, when Alexander Thom and his son Archibald Thom were doing their surveys, I visited with them and said, please take some time and go to Nettlebed. And with your skill and your understanding, would you try to get a reading of Nettlebed in the sense of it being the prime meridian? And both men had some concern with why I felt it was operating in that way. And I said, well, in the broad term, Nettlebed really represented a distance from what people called for a long time Mount Everest, and in the other direction, what they called Mount McKinley. Now, the Denali, whose area it's in, they have the mountain with the name of who they are, because in a sense it means, I believe, the high one. Well, whatever else attends the name, it is indeed high. But what's not known to people is that the original designate of Denali also took into account the height in meters. And people who heard that back in the 40s thought I was flaming crackers when I said it. And what I tried to get across was that we think that we, as a white race, going amongst these Indians, these poor, benighted, uneducated, and otherwise not very well informed people, wouldn't have a system by which they could accurately measure it. Not true. Not true. And far from being ignorant, as so often is the case, they knew far more about it than we. They regard that mountain, or at least the Denali of that day, regarded that mountain as the mountain of Ares. In other words, Mars's mountain. Now, Why would they do such a thing? Let's look at this squarely in the face. Phobos goes around Mars, the innermost moon of Mars, in 7 hours, 39 minutes, and 14 seconds. Mars itself rotates at 24 hours, 37 minutes, and 23 seconds. And Deimos, 30 hours, 17 minutes, and 55 seconds. If you total that, it would be 6193.92. And that is the number of meters that Denali is high. So no wonder it is Ares' mountain, because it describes quite accurately to the meter the time of Mars and its two moons, Mars's rotation and the moon's orbits. What do you need to put away your thought on your superiority? Because you plainly don't have the truth. Now, they called their mountain Denali. What did they call the one on the other side of the Great Pond? They called it, as far over as it is in the Himalayas, they called it Ilanid. Listen to it. Denali Ilanid. One was for Ares, the other was for Venus. Let's try this now. If you have something that is 238 degrees, because you see, this is what these Denali said. It is the length, the distance is the length of a man or a human being, more to the point, as an adult. 238 degrees, rather, is with the bones of a person and their teeth. Well, the bones on an adult person are given on average as 206. It's 16, 206, 16. Just as a child is 10, 350, and 10. 370 total. So when you put all of that together, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but it is noticeable that the two together make 608, which is a tenth of the sea mile. And that tells you that they knew that we came out of the sea. And the sea between the two things is not a big deal in the minds of the Denali, even though they are quite landlocked in being where they are. But that doesn't mean that their minds are there. That just means their bodies are there. Okay, so in what they knew, let's look at it from their perspective. They thought of Ilanid as being a distance from the nettle bed, which they knew the name of in Greek. It's interesting. Why should they know that? But their shamanic people did know it because they communicated with these things. Anyway, the point is this, that in that 238 degrees, obviously there is something about that that has to be registered in why it's important that they had a designation that was different from what we say. We say that it's 87 degrees from Greenwich, and that leaves 151 degrees on the other end. The Denali say no, or at least said no. I don't know if any Denali today even have any idea. But if it's 1 degree over, that means it's 150 on the one end and 88 on the other. Well, 150 times the 88, oh, that only equals 3200. But if it's times the 238, and then you divide it by the tetrachord, which is 100,000. And what do you get? 3.1416 pi. This was not an accident, folks. They knew the whole bloody planet. And they thought of the mountains that we have had the audacity to call Mount Everest and Mount McKinley, rather than where their names really were posited, out around Nettlebed. We have done this in sheer ignorance of what the truth is. How shameful. But we're the superior culture. We're the people who know, except that we don't. That's why I want you to please think about these indigenous peoples, these Native Americans who can tell you things you need to know if you will listen. You need to listen for the safety and the sake and the safety of the planet, because you're running out of time. And it's clear that you have notions of your superiority when it's not justified. I have not been, quote, an Indian advocate. No, I haven't. Because of the fact that I had to stay under the radar. But it has made my blood boil over the years. The opportunities that you have lost, even to the best efforts of our Bureau of Ethnology, that left you wonderful reports, at some sacrifice to themselves in many cases. In fact, some of them, their lives. I don't know what is going to bring it home. I just don't know. And I worry that you'll go on being as ignorant as you have been and as arrogant as you have been with respect to what these people can tell you. Many of them still can. You need to listen. And you need to listen up, as we say. Now, I know I sound like a very hostile witness at this point, and I won't deny it. I am. I had great admiration for black elk. And when I was offered the opportunity to go and see him, Pine Ridge, my father turned down a wonderful offer. My uncle, much later, said he didn't want me there amongst the Jesuits, the priests, and he had his reasons. I had no idea what my uncle was having in mind as to what those reasons might be, because he didn't share them with me. But he was very emphatic about it, and since he was in the Knights of Columbus, and very high up in the organization and former military, I had to believe that it was something of substance and seriousness in my father's mind. But the person who would have conducted me was Vine Deloria's aunt, Ella Cara Deloria. And I remember with my Irish governess looking up at her when she was at Columbia. And I said to her, "You're beautiful." She was in her raiment and the like. It brings tears to my eyes now. because she looked down at me and she said, when the sun is down and the moon's not up, maybe. And then she turned to Christine Hurley, and my Irish governess, and said, may I? She put her arms up, picked me up, and propped me on the desk. And she said, Time Singer, I want to know. What can you tell me? You have called me La Donna Cota. So that means to me, you know something about me I don't know something about myself. And I want to know. And I also want to offer you an opportunity to meet with someone who you admire, and that would be Black Elk. My disappointment with my father was manifold, because not only was Ella Cara Deloria's offer to me, with herself as the guide and person that I would be in constant contact with and not subject to the priests, but my Irish governess could go with me. What better offer could be asked for? But Ella Cara Deloria was, I think, very surprised at my father's refusal, because it was a truly genuine offer, and she realized that I needed to meet with Black Elk so that we could together find a path that was pointed out to some degree by the name I had called her. And the thing is, if you stop and think about it for a moment, the la, the da, the na refers very clearly to Lakota, Dakota, Nakota. And the kota that follows means family, friends, so on and so forth. That's what it means. And these people had codes, really quite strict codes. Now, Ella Cara Deloria spoke all three dialects. Most unusual. They might know one or another, but to know all three, and then she knew other Indian languages as well. She was a very remarkable woman. And yes, I thought she was beautiful then, and I still think so. But what was not beautiful was the disrepute in which so many of her tribespeople were held. No excuse. Just like in boot camp, one of the things you learn right off the bat, no excuse, sir. You get it wrong, you own to the fact you got it wrong, and you get it right next time. Or you might get a boot to the butt, rather. Well, there is something to what Ella meant to me, because I went back to see her. And not once, not twice, but thrice. And I think in what I was able to tell her, even though I was never able to meet with Black Elk, was somewhat, on the third meeting, more amplified by the fact that the writer that put together the Sacred Pipe, the poet and the like, who found a way to express Black Elk and gave much of his effort and life in that response to something he believed in. He had drawings that were given him by Black Elk, and his instruction was, save them for the Time Singer. So when I brought them to Ella Cara Deloria and showed her what they were, she said, some of these no one has ever seen apart from the person who had them and one of his daughters. I treasured those, but again, October 27, 2004, they, along with all my work, all my artwork, all my science, everything, except the Manhattan Project that was on my back at the university, because I never left it in the house, never left it in the apartment, in the flat. Everything else was destroyed. Destroyed by, unfortunately, the housing authority. Now, I didn't want to go into any of this, and I'll leave it there, but all I'm saying is that how ignorance and arrogance and everything else that is low and without a thought in the world of what is being done by way of damage to others while damaging me. These people are still doing it, which is one of the reasons I'm not prepared today as I'd like to be, because they damaged the very machine that I was trying to, so you know, it's a international bank calculator, a Casio, which is 16 digits, and they have absolutely made a mess out of that machine. I can't tell you what I feel about all of that, because obviously they haven't given up doing these damages. And at a time when we need, and critically need, the informations that I have that go, yes, back of the Manhattan Project in terms of my participation, which didn't really start until the early summer of 45. And I looked at the lies that had gone on and on and on. And one of them that concerns me very greatly is what's in all the textbooks. The velocity of light given to the meter as 299.792458. That last number is wrong, and they know it's wrong. It's 299.792459. That number is shy by 1. Now, why do we know that the 459 is that correct? It's because actually if you columnize the one that everybody knew in a former age, the 2997925 and 1862813, that's the one that yields the Ares, Phobos, Harmonia, Deimos, and Aphrodite in that middle position between the two measures. Now, let's look at that for a moment. If you columnize it just like Chinese, 2997925, over here, 1862813, you've got both velocities of light in a column. The result, 459. In other words, the number of minutes it takes Phobos to go around Mars. That's why that phobic element is fear connected with the velocity of light. They were trying to leave us the message that the one thing that you can abuse from which there is no recovery, abusing the light. and that's the power that's nuclear. Wakey, wakey, world, because that's what you're engaged in. And this brinksmanship and this saber rattling and all the other things that you're doing, that is, I mean, I'm surprised that the President of the United States behaves like a chimp in a tree, like the guy from North Korea, rather. I mean, what difference is there in the attitude? Not much. It's like two little boys that have got these big toys, and they're going to play this game back and forth. I wonder if he ever weighs his words. I mean, we have already proven with the dropping of the bomb at Hiroshima and 3 days later, Nagasaki, that we are prepared to use this deadly weaponry. Now, just for the record, let me state, the only thing I had as far as participation in the situation of 45 with the fissionable elements, I did give the 235 to 6 places of decimal to show that it was reciprocal resonance and shouldn't be used. I didn't encourage anybody to use anything, but I certainly did the opposite. I said, don't, and they did it. Now, the thing I did do is I provided the heavy isotopes to 6 places of decimal, all 4. The 235, the 237, the 238, and the 239. Now, the 239, they could put that on an assembly line. And that's about what we did. I don't know what can be said except that we already have so much in the way of nuclear this and nuclear that with no way to bury it safely or anything else. Why do we need more? When the President of the United States says, I like war, that's because he's never been in one. I can speak to that. Now, the other thing is that he's saying we need more nuclear weapons. For what? Who needs nuclear weapons? Nobody needs them. Put them away.